Everybody, I am Stacy Pearsall. I was an Air Force photographer, some of you may or may not know, and I was invited to help judge this photo contest, and I wanted to let you know that everyone did a great job. All the pictures that were submitted were really, really nice. So I've just breezed through the individual categories really quickly and made a few cursory selections. Now that I've seen everything in the individual categories, I'm going to go back through and make my 1 through 5 judgings as requested. And I will talk to you a little bit about my thoughts as we go. I'm not going to belabor a lot of stuff, so I'm just going to breeze through. Let me start by opening this up. And of course, I will talk to you a little bit about captions and things like that, which I think are important because there were some questions that I had, and going to the captions some were good and some were not. I'll just say that. Okay, I'm going to flip through these. This is the combat doc category, and what I will say, when I was looking through this, I was looking for something like this that struck me that shows movement, intensity, something new. A picture should have you stop for a moment, pause, and say, okay, what's interesting about this photo? What is it telling me? Am I learning something new? Am I seeing something in a different way I've not noticed before? And for me, this image did that. I will say that in large part, a lot of the photos that were submitted in this category are relatively static, which is okay. And I'm glad I'm going through this a second time because there are things I didn't see the first go round. This is quite an intense moment. For me, a picture like this is an almost moment where you have your main subject matter in the lower third here, and I want to look here, but I can't get there because where the headlights are located. Now, if the photographer had shifted up or down, that might have been a different story or a different outcome for this photo, but all things like that make a huge difference. I liked this image because, again, it showcases the photographer's ability to use the camera gear and the technique to demonstrate activity and motion, which for combat doc is important in my opinion. This belongs in feature. This one's interesting, but on the right hand side there is so much that's dark in the frame that tends to offset the image a little too heavily for me. I like this, but I want to be engaging here, and it's really tough to discern what's going on right there. I've selected it just to make this comment. I think for me this was an almost. I appreciate this picture because obviously it was the flooding, in response to the flooding, which is definitely in that vein. The problem is it has to be, I mean, it shows the backs of individuals, and I want to see not only the devastation that's happening and what they're responding to, but I want to see the intensity on their face and what this mission means to them. With this picture, it just falls a little short. So I liked this one. I tagged this one. I think there are a lot of nice points about this picture. I do appreciate that whomever took this picture took a 50 mil and shot it at 1.2, because a critical focus on a 50 mil is unforgiving. So kudos to taking chances. And I think when you take risks like this, rewards can be very, very high. I think this image is an example of a very high reward. I appreciate this, and this is in the same vein, maybe the same photographer taking that 50 mil out. What I will say, this image doesn't have that the other one does, is that point of focus choices. To me, this says the subject matter is the actual rifle and not the person wielding that rifle. For combat doc, I mean, and again, everything about judging is so subjective, and it's my own opinion. So, but based on my own opinion, I would have much rather seen the subject in focus and not the rifle. I like this. I wish there was more of a human element to it. I know that There's one little individual right here. I wish there was the individual up in here to be more of the center of focus. Critical focus, sharpness. I know shooting at after dark can be really, really difficult in those situations. I selected this one not necessarily because it's in my top 5, but kudos to the photographer for making sure that you show that the helicopter is actually in motion. What I did notice throughout the contest was a lot of helicopters had frozen blades, which means that visually in the one-dimensional space they could drop out of the sky. So I like to see that the shutter speed was slowed down and there was forethought in letting people know that this is a helicopter in the sky, in motion, not an illustration. This has all the qualities of a combat doc image. It's a moment, action, intensity. It's an almost right here. You can kind of see this individual's face. Everything about the frame, from the foreground, middle ground, and then background, is informational. For me, that is really, really important in any image. The same for this. Foreground, middle ground, background, intensity. Here's the helicopter. It's slightly moving, which is good enough for me. But again, slowing that down just a hair more, you had some room to maneuver your shutter speed there. But just things to think about. This was an almost for me as well. There's movement and intensity, but there was something lacking in the objective of the photograph. Backs of heads, I don't need that. Backs of cars, don't need that either. Interesting. I think what this needs is a little bit of separation between the foreground and the middle ground to be successful. Okay, so let me exit out of here. I'm going to go to color class and look at what I've got down to 2, 4, 6, 8 pictures. So now that I'm down to my final 8, it's really going to come down to, oops, I meant to deselect that one. So we'll go back. Color class. Information intensity, foreground, middle ground, background. Just looking across the board, I would even say that these top 4 are in final contention. I'm going to drop this one down and this one down. So that looks like my top 5. Right there. So let's see. All right. I am going to be looking a little bit further. Okay. This is what I want to talk about. The captioning. Obviously, this is a really great image, but it lacks in context in terms of the supportive captioning information. I can gather a lot from the frame itself, the picture itself, but I can't really tell by the caption what is going on. So that's kind of a ding on my, in my opinion. Let's see. Okay. Don't forget who, what, when, where, and why. So this says the who and the where. And maybe somewhat the what, but when is a good question. I love this picture though. I think it's really nice. Let's see what's going on with this one. Okay. Now this is a nice meaty caption. I can appreciate that. Someone who really hated doing captions can appreciate an informational one like this. And what I will say is I'm not going to judge the pictures based on the caption or the lack thereof. What I'm going to do is put it on the merit of the pictures themselves. But I just wanted y'all to know that that was definitely something that was on my mind. So I keep going back to this one. I also like these two. So I'm going to look at them big again. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.